Power does not corrupt man. It simply reveals who he always was when masks are no longer necessary. Richard Milhouse Nixon did not become a monster in the Oval Office. He arrived there as one, carefully disguised, meticulously controlled, waiting for the moment when absolute power would finally allow him to express the paranoia, resentment, and thirst for revenge that had been the invisible engine of his entire life. Nixon's tragedy is not that power destroyed him. It is that power gave him permission to destroy himself publicly, recording every moment of his disintegration on tapes that would become the most brutal testimony of what happens when a mind at war with itself gains access to the levers of the empire. Nixon was born in 1913 in Yorba Linda, California, into a Quaker family marked by poverty and tragedy. His father, Frank Nixon, was a failed and violent man who dragged the family from one failed business to another. His mother, Hannah, was a cold and pious woman who offered conditional love based on performance and moral conformity. Two of Richard's brothers died young of tuberculosis while he survived. This is not a sentimental biography. It is the origin of a specific psychology, that of the guilty survivor. The child who learns early that love must be earned through achievements, that vulnerability is weakness, and that the world is a place where only paranoids survive because others are waiting for your moment of weakness to attack you. Nixon did not develop paranoia in response to real threats. He developed paranoia as a basic interpretive structure of reality, and that structure would accompany him all the way to the White House. At school, Nixon was brilliant, but deeply socially maladjusted. He lacked the natural ease that some children have for friendship, the instinctive charisma that attracts others. He compensated for this with obsessive work. He became the best student, the best debater, the most prepared in every situation. But even when he won, he felt he was losing. When he was accepted to Harvard but couldn't attend due to lack of funds, the wound was not just economic, it was existential. The world had shown him that merit was not enough, that there was a class of people, the future Kennedys, who were born with advantages that no effort could compensate for. This lesson was tattooed on his psyche. The system is rigged against you. You have to play dirty because they are already doing it. Virtue is for the naive. Power is for those willing to get their hands dirty. Nixon did not choose darkness as a tactic. He internalized it as a fundamental truth about how the world really works. His early political career confirmed this vision. In 1946, Nixon won his first congressional seat through a brutal smear campaign against his opponent, Jerry Voorhis, falsely implying communist connections. It worked. The American public of the McCarthy era was sufficiently terrified of the red threat that mere suggestion was enough. Nixon had discovered something fundamental. Truth is irrelevant if you can control fear. You don't need evidence if you can generate paranoia. And if you're willing to say what others won't, to cross lines that others respect, you have a decisive tactical advantage. Every victory gained this way reinforced the lesson. Morality is a luxury only those who are not hungry for power can afford. Those who truly want to win must be willing to do whatever it takes. His rise continued with the Alger Hiss case, a State Department official accused of Soviet espionage. Nixon, then on the House Un-American Activities Committee, pursued Hiss with an intensity that went beyond duty. This was not simply anti-communism. It was something more visceral. Hiss represented everything Nixon hated. Educated at Harvard, well-connected, part of the East Coast establishment that had always looked at him with barely concealed disdain. Destroying Hiss was not just about protecting national security. It was symbolic revenge against an entire social class. And when Hiss was eventually convicted of perjury, Nixon experienced more than professional satisfaction. He experienced psychological validation. His paranoia had been correct. His enemies really existed. His willingness to fight dirty had been justified. The system had proven him right. And that is dangerous, because when paranoia is rewarded, it does not diminish. It intensifies. This dynamic propelled him to the vice presidency under Eisenhower in 1952, at the age of 39. But even in victory, Nixon could not escape his own psychology. During the campaign, he was exposed for maintaining a secret fund of political donations. The scandal threatened to destroy his career. His response was the famous Checkers speech, where he appeared on television with his wife Pat, talking about their financial difficulties, his respectable fabric coat, the dog his daughters had received as a gift and refused to return. It was calculated emotional theater, a direct appeal to the American middle class reflected in his struggle. It worked brilliantly. Public opinion saved him. But observe the psychological mechanics. Nixon had learned that vulnerability could be weaponized, that victimization could be performance, that if you played the card of the common man attacked by elites correctly, you could turn a scandal into political capital. It wasn't sincerity, it was surgical emotional manipulation. And the fact that it worked made it even more dangerous because it confirmed that the public could be manipulated, that authenticity was unnecessary if the performance was convincing. For 8 years as vice president, Nixon was marginalized and underestimated by Eisenhower, who never fully respected him, who saw him as a political necessity, but not as an equal. This constant humiliation fueled the resentment that was already Nixon's psychological fuel. And then came 1960, the presidential election against John F. Kennedy. Here was the personification of everything Nixon despised. Young, handsome, charismatic, rich, educated at Harvard, a product of privilege that he never had to fight for the way Nixon fought. The televised debates revealed something brutal. In the age of television, substance was secondary to image. Nixon, sweaty, pale, with a 5-day beard visible, looked like a used car salesman. Kennedy, tanned, relaxed, confident, looked presidential. Those who listened to the debate on the radio thought Nixon won. Those who watched it on television gave the victory to Kennedy. The medium had become the message, and Nixon was not equipped for that medium. Not because he lacked intelligence or preparation, but because his own psychology, his fundamental discomfort with himself, was transmitted viscerally through the camera. He lost by a microscopic margin, possibly due to electoral fraud in Illinois and Texas. Nixon suspected this. He was probably right, but he chose not to challenge the results, not to force a constitutional crisis. This decision is often cited as evidence of his patriotism, his willingness to put the country first. But there was another dimension. Nixon was calculating his future. He knew that fighting and losing would end his political career. Better to withdraw gracefully, keep the option to return. It was not nobility, it was strategy. And during the following years, while Kennedy governed, while the Kennedy family became American royalty, Nixon silently nurtured his resentment, planning his comeback, confident that history would eventually vindicate him against the golden men who had defeated him not because they were better, but because they were luckier. His attempt to return as governor of California in 1962 ended in disaster. He lost, and in the subsequent press conference, he uttered words that seemed to be his political epitaph. "You won't have Nixon to kick around anymore because, gentlemen, this is my last press conference." The consensus was that Nixon was finished. He had publicly sacrificed himself, revealing the bitterness and resentment that had always been there, but which he had managed to hide. The press celebrated his exit. The establishment breathed a sigh of relief. But they had misunderstood something fundamental. Nixon did not know how to surrender. Failure did not destroy him. It fueled him. Every defeat was evidence that the system was corrupt, that his enemies were real, that his paranoia was justified. And instead of withdrawing, he began to meticulously plan his resurrection. And then the world changed in ways Nixon could not have orchestrated, but knew how to exploit with tactical genius. Kennedy was assassinated in 1963. The era of innocence ended. Johnson won in 1964, but got trapped in Vietnam. The country fragmented. Racial riots burned cities. Students rebelled. The counterculture challenged every traditional value. And Nixon, watching from the shadows, saw his opportunity. He understood that the silent majority of Americans was terrified of chaos, nostalgic for order, willing to vote for anyone who promised to restore stability. Nixon positioned himself as that man. He did not appeal to the best angels of American nature. He appealed to their fears, resentments, and desire for revenge against the liberal elites who seemed to be destroying the country. And in 1968, after one of the most violent years in American history, Nixon won the presidency. But the victory did not bring peace to his mind. On the contrary, power intensified every latent pathology. Now he had real enemies, not imaginary ones. The press hated him. Protesters shouted outside the White House. Democrats in Congress blocked his agenda. And Nixon, instead of governing with the confidence that power should grant, governed with the paranoia of someone who knew his position was precarious, that it could be taken away at any moment, that he had to protect it at any cost. He created a list of enemies, literally a written list of journalists, academics, activists who should be investigated, harassed, destroyed. He ordered illegal wiretaps. He used the IRS to audit political opponents. He established a secret unit, the Plumbers, to stop leaks and carry out covert operations against anyone threatening his administration. Nixon's White House was not a government. It was a besieged bunker where every decision was driven by the fear of exposure. And here is the brutal irony. Nixon was, in many ways, an effective president. He opened relations with China, a strategic genius move that reconfigured global geopolitics. He negotiated détente with the Soviet Union, reducing nuclear tensions. He established the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. He proposed healthcare reforms that were progressive for his time. But none of these achievements mattered to him as much as destroying his enemies. The legacy he could have built was secondary to the war he was fighting against real and imaginary threats. This reveals something fundamental about the nature of power. No matter how much you have, if your psychology is structured around victimization. Nixon had the most powerful job in the world and still felt besieged, still operated from a place of resentment and fear. External power cannot heal internal war. Vietnam era Su's obsession and his curse. He inherited the war from Johnson, but made it his own, secretly expanding it to Cambodia and Laos, while publicly promising peace. Thousands of Americans and hundreds of thousands of Vietnamese, Cambodians, and Laotians died during his presidency, not because there was a clear path to victory, but because Nixon could not tolerate the humiliation of defeat. When the Pentagon Papers were leaked in 1971, revealing decades of government lies about Vietnam, Nixon was furious. Daniel Ellsberg, who leaked the documents, became the focus of a personal vendetta. Nixon ordered a break-in at Ellsberg's psychiatrist's office, seeking compromising information. Not to protect national security, that was the pretext. It was to destroy a man who had dared to challenge his authority, reveal truths that the government wanted to hide. Nixon's response to the truth was not to acknowledge it. It was to attack the messenger with all the machinery of the state. This mentality reached its purest expression in Watergate. In June 1972, 5 men were arrested trying to install listening devices at the Democratic National Committee headquarters in the Watergate complex. Initially, it seemed like a third-rate, incompetent, and strange burglary. But the threads began to connect. The burglars had links to Nixon's re-election campaign. The money used for the operation could be traced to campaign funds. And then the cover-up began. Nixon did not order the original burglary, probably not even knowing about it in advance. But when he found out, his instinct was not to distance himself, investigate, clean house. His instinct was to protect, hide, lie. Because admitting anything would show weakness. And in Nixon's mind, weakness was death. The cover-up required layered lies, each more elaborate than the previous one. Nixon used the CIA to block the FBI investigation, a clear obstruction of justice. He paid hush money to the burglars. He ordered his aides to commit perjury. And for months, it seemed it would work. He won re-election in 1972 in a landslide victory, carrying 49 states. But 2 journalists from the Washington Post, Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, did not let go of the story. They followed every lead, every connection, every anomaly. And slowly, methodically, the castle of lies began to collapse. Not because the journalists were particularly brilliant, although they were, but because Nixon's lies were unsustainable. Too many people involved, too many points of failure, too much paranoia that generated more errors. And then came the revelation that destroyed everything. Nixon had been recording all conversations in the Oval Office. A secret recording system captured every word. When this became public, Congress and the special prosecutor demanded the tapes. Nixon refused, citing executive privilege. The legal battle reached the Supreme Court, which unanimously ordered their release. And when they were finally published, they revealed something darker than theft or cover-up. They revealed Nixon's unfiltered mind. The language was vulgar, anti-Semitic, paranoid, obsessively focused on destroying enemies. The tapes showed a man without the carefully constructed masks he had worn all his life. They revealed the internal war made audible. And what they showed was so disturbing that even his most loyal allies abandoned him. A particular tape became central, the one from June 23, 1972, 6 days after the theft. In it, Nixon explicitly ordered the CIA to stop the FBI investigation. It was direct evidence of obstruction of justice. It was the smoking gun. When it was released, Nixon's political support evaporated instantly. The Republicans in Congress, who had defended the president for months, told him he would be impeached and convicted. He had no way out. And on August 8, 1974, Richard Nixon became the first and only U.S. president to resign from office. His resignation speech was characteristically revealing. He did not admit guilt. He spoke of errors of judgment. He quoted Theodore Roosevelt about the man in the arena. He presented himself until the end as a victim of forces he did not fully understand, but that had always been against him. But the tapes revealed something more than specific crimes. They revealed Nixon's operating philosophy. In one conversation, he told his aides, "I want you to use any means we have, any, to harass our enemies, tax audits, anything." In another, "When the president does it, that means it's not illegal." This was not simply opportunistic corruption. It was a theory of executive power, where the president was above the law, where any action could be justified if it served presidential interests. Nixon did not see this as authoritarianism. He saw it as realism. Previous presidents had done similar things, secretly. He was just clumsy enough to get caught and paranoid enough to record his own incriminating evidence. The difference was not of type, but of degree. And this raises an uncomfortable question. How much of what Nixon did was unique to him? And how much was simply the logic of imperial executive power carried to its logical conclusion and then exposed? After resigning, Nixon lived another 20 years. He never admitted true responsibility. In interviews with David Frost, he admitted that he had disappointed the country, but avoided acknowledging criminal activity. He wrote books, slowly rehabilitating his image as a senior statesman, an expert in foreign policy. Some forgave him, others never did. He died in 1994, and presidents attended his funeral, spoke of his openness to China, his complexity, his resilience. But none of that posthumous rehabilitation changes the central truth of his presidency. Nixon had the opportunity to be great, and he destroyed it because he could not control the demons he had fed all his life. It was not the system that destroyed him. He destroyed himself, meticulously recording every step of his self-immolation. Nixon's lesson is not simply about a flawed man. It is about what happens when individual psychopathology encounters institutional power. Nixon was not an aberration. He was an extreme case study of patterns that exist to a lesser degree in countless leaders. Paranoia that interprets all opposition as conspiracy. Resentment that turns politics into personal revenge. The inability to distinguish between legitimate criticism and existential attack. The willingness to violate norms and laws when personal power is threatened. These are not rare. They are common. Nixon simply displayed them without the competence to hide them effectively. And he was destroyed not because his crimes were unprecedented, but because he was stupid enough to record them. And here is the final mirror, the one that should point towards you. Nixon's mind, that machine of paranoia and resentment, was not entirely alien. It was human. Extreme, yes. Completely destructive, absolutely. but built from impulses that exist in everyone. The desire for revenge against those who humiliated you. The temptation to use any power you have to hurt your enemies. The willingness to rationalize immoral actions if they serve your interests. The inability to admit error because admission feels like annihilation. The belief that the world is fundamentally unjust and therefore you are justified in cheating. Nixon did not invent these impulses. He simply pursued them with less inhibition than most. The question is not whether you have these impulses. It is what you would do with them if you had the power Nixon had. How much revenge would you carry out if no one could stop you? How many lines would you cross if you were convinced that your enemies already crossed them? How much power would you abuse if you could rationalize it as necessary? Nixon cannot answer for you. Only you can. And that honest and terrifying answer will tell you more about yourself than you probably want to know. The difference between you and Nixon could simply be that you never had his opportunity. Does that make you better? Or just less tested?